The Motel Voices True Horror Story. What would you do if you were completely alone in a roadside motel at 2:00 inches the morning, and suddenly the man in the room beside you started talking in different voices? Not two people, just one man, pretending to be multiple people. And what if I told you that was only the beginning? Welcome back to Umair Mystery. Tonight's story is one of the creepiest motel encounters I've ever heard. A lonely highway motel, a strange man changing voices in the middle of the night, and a terrifying feeling that something was deeply wrong. This is not a ghost story. This is a real-life horror encounter that proves sometimes humans are far scarier than anything supernatural. This happened to me about 2 years ago while I was driving from New York down to Tennessee to visit one of my college friends. I've always liked long drives alone. Usually, I just listen to music, podcasts, or random YouTube videos while driving through the night. But that trip became one of the most terrifying experiences of my life. I had started driving early in the morning, thinking I could finish the entire trip without stopping. But sometime after midnight, exhaustion hit me hard. My eyes were burning, my body felt heavy, and I knew continuing to drive would be dangerous. Around 1 in the morning, somewhere off a highway in Virginia, I pulled off at one of those empty exits that only have a gas station, a fast food place, and a couple old motels. I picked the cheapest motel because, honestly, I only needed a place to sleep for a few hours. The motel already looked disturbing from the outside. Half the lights were broken, the parking lot was nearly empty, and the whole place looked like something straight out of a horror movie. I almost drove away, but I was too exhausted to care anymore. The front office had thick glass covering the counter, which already felt weird. The guy working there looked half asleep. He barely even looked at me while checking me in. I asked him casually if the motel was busy tonight, and I still remember his exact words. "Most of the upstairs rooms are empty." At the time, that actually made me feel safer. No loud guests, no parties, no noise, just silence. Looking back now, that sentence honestly creeps me out. My room was on the second floor near the far end of the building. The room itself looked old and humid. There was this weird smell in the air, like old carpet mixed with cigarette smoke. The air conditioner made horrible rattling noises, so I just turned it off. I locked the door, shut the blinds, took a shower, and laid down on the bed with the TV playing quietly in the background. Everything seemed normal at first, until I started hearing voices from the room next door. At first, it sounded like a couple arguing. One voice sounded deep and angry, the other sounded softer, nervous, almost like a woman. The motel walls were so thin I could hear almost everything. At first I was just annoyed because I thought they'd keep me awake all night. But after a few minutes, I noticed something strange. The conversation sounded too perfect. There was never any overlap, no interruptions, no real emotion. Each voice waited perfectly for the other to stop speaking before responding. That's when I realized something horrifying. There weren't two people in that room. It was one man, doing both voices himself. The deeper voice sounded natural, but the softer voice sounded like the same guy trying to imitate a woman. The second I realized that, my stomach dropped, because suddenly this stopped feeling annoying and started feeling dangerous. A few moments later, the voices suddenly stopped completely. Silence filled the room. Then suddenly, knock, knock, knock. Slow, heavy knocks hit the wall beside my bed. Then I heard a muffled voice quietly say, "I hear you in there." I froze instantly. A few seconds later, knock, knock, I hear you in there." The way he said it sounded playful, like he was enjoying terrifying somebody. I grabbed the TV remote and turned the volume louder, trying to ignore him. For around 30 seconds, everything became silent again. Then I heard a door open outside, and instantly, my heart started racing because I realized he had left his room. I could hear footsteps slowly moving across the balcony outside. Closer, closer, closer. I stared at the tiny crack between the blinds, wondering if I should look outside or not. Part of me thought maybe I was overreacting. Maybe the guy was drunk. Maybe mentally unstable. But eventually curiosity won. I slowly walked to the window and carefully pulled the blinds apart just enough to look outside, and immediately jumped backward. The man was standing directly outside my window, staring inside. His face was inches away from the glass. We made eye contact for a split second before I stumbled backward in panic. Then he started changing his voice again. 1 second childish, the next second deep and aggressive, then suddenly speaking in a fake southern accent. It sounded insane, like somebody acting out multiple characters in the middle of the night outside my motel room. Then the knocking started again, this time on my actual motel door. Harder, louder, not enough to break the door down, but enough to terrify me completely. I immediately called the front office and told the worker somebody outside my room was acting insane. At first, the employee sounded annoyed, until he heard the banging through the phone. Then his tone changed instantly. He said he was coming upstairs right away. The man kept switching voices while knocking for another minute before suddenly stopping completely. I looked through the peephole and saw him quickly walking back into the room beside mine. A few moments later, the motel employee arrived carrying a flashlight with one hand resting near his holster. That alone made me panic even more. Clearly, this wasn't normal behavior at this motel. The worker knocked on the guy's room multiple times, asking him to open the door, but nobody answered. Eventually he came over to me and quietly said, "That guy's been staying here for a while." That sentence alone made me want to leave immediately. Instead, I asked if I could switch rooms. Thankfully, he agreed. He moved me downstairs near the front office beside my car. I grabbed my stuff as quickly as possible and followed him. The second room looked exactly the same, except now I finally felt safer. Or at least, I thought I was safe. At some point, exhaustion caught up with me and I eventually fell asleep. I don't know how long I slept before waking up again, but it was still dark outside. And once again, I heard footsteps outside my room. I looked toward the blinds and saw a shadow slowly pass by the window. Then again, and again, I slowly walked toward the crack in the blinds and looked outside. And my blood ran cold. It was him, the same man from upstairs, slowly pacing back and forth outside my room while staring directly toward the window every time he passed. But this time, he wasn't talking anymore. No voices, no knocking, just silence. Honestly, that somehow felt even more terrifying. The second the sun started coming up, I grabbed my bags, threw them in my car, and left without even returning the key card. Even today, years later, I still think about that motel sometimes. Because the scariest part wasn't the building itself, it was realizing how dangerous and unpredictable some people truly are. So tell me honestly, would you have stayed in that motel? Or would you have left immediately? And if you enjoyed tonight's story, don't forget to subscribe to Mystery Training for more real horror encounters, unsolved mysteries, and terrifying true stories.